Good morning, Will. First off, I'm not a professional YouTuber. I simply make videos to help out other Plex server owners like myself with videos that I wish were available to me 3.5 years ago when I started out. On the wrong foot, basically. My naming was atrocious. Didn't understand the naming guides with Plex because I didn't even know they existed. So I'm running Plex on a Synology NAS, a DS1019 Plus. This is my elementary OS desktop computer. It's a version of Linux based on Ubuntu. But Filebot should work the same on a Windows machine or a Mac. So to start off with, I did a little prepping. I moved this first season back to my computer, and I renamed the files just as you have them. I also made a duplicate folder. I just added the TVDB database name to the show folder name simply to have a second copy. And these are named just by their episode name. You mentioned ripping a series from disk. That can be a pain, and lots of times that involves simply opening up each individual file and identifying it. And you can literally have the TVDB open, and lots of times with cartoons especially, the episode name is at the beginning, and all you're going to do is copy the episode name and paste it into the file name to identify your optical rips. Sometimes if you're doing a regular TV show, they'll all be in sequence. You might just be able to go down and rename them based on the DVD order here. You see, I'm looking at the DVD order, but for this show, the aired order and the DVD order are a match. That's not always the case with a lot of shows. So anyway, I just wanted to point out we're going to do this both ways, just based on the episode name and based on the naming as you have Westworld. But in case you haven't noticed, there is both orders and an absolute order at TVDB. And at the end of the video, I'll show you how to adjust your settings in Plex to point to the DVD ordering for a particular show, if that's how you want to set it up. So let's get into the expressions. I'll include these in the description of the video. This is my expression that I use for movies, and this is the expression I use for TV shows. Now you need media info installed to use this part of the expression. Media info will look inside the files and pass what it finds on to Filebot. So this VF is video format, VC is video codec, AF audio format, AC audio codec. And this will rename subtitles. So anyway, I'll paste that in. You don't need to worry about copying it from the video. So let's just open up Filebot without loading anything in it. Now unfortunately, Filebot does not scale properly on my 28-inch 4K monitor, so all the text is going to be small. Down here is the preset option, and this is where you can add your own custom expressions. If you wanted to add my expression, you would choose Edit Preset, New Preset, give it a name, we'll just call it New, and you want to make sure the data source is set correctly. By default, it's going to be for episodes. But if you were setting up the movie expression, you'd want to drop down to the movie database. And it's really just that simple. Paste the expression in here and leave everything else by default and hit save. But you notice if you wanted to have an expression that pulled the naming from DVD order, you could use the same TV show expression that I'm going to give you and have it in Filebot twice. Once for the DVD order, once for the air date order. But I want everything by the air date, so that's how I use Filebot. So now we've got just my two expressions. So I'm going to close this, and let's start with how you've got things named. So you could, or at least on my system, I could highlight all these, right click, and open with, well, I can't do Filebot. Sorry, it's got to be a folder. I could right click on the season folder and open in Filebot. I could back up and right click on the show folder and open in Filebot. So name just as you have them. I'm not going to use my custom expression. I'm just going to hit match and use the default binding, also an expression that comes with Filebot. So we're in episode mode at the top, and we'll just choose the TVDB. So that simply quickly changes all the episode coding to the SO1 EO1 format that Plex expects. And you'll note Filebot also uses the file name separator that Plex uses most often in any written description of a space dash space. This could be a period if you wanted it. You can't change the default binding, but you could set your expression up to do that if you really wanted to see periods there. But what you have to be careful is you don't want a file name like a scene release. Like you could have Westworld period SO1 EO4 period dissonance theory, but you would not want dissonance period theory. You wouldn't want a period to replace natural spaces. That's a little segue. So now if we drop down here to use my custom expression, we've got the same thing going on for the show name, the season episode coding, and then the episode is listed. But this expression puts extra file characteristics into brackets like Plex instructs us to do in the latest revision of the TV show naming guide, while also listing media characteristics. It's a 720p resolution encoded with the XRH264 encoder, 6-channel audio, and the audio is DTS. So I like a descriptive file name, but in order for that to work, you have to install media info on your computer that you're using Filebot on. And one little caveat, if you happen to use Linux, which probably isn't the case, you can't install either Filebot or media info through the wonderful FlatHub store. You can't install them as Flatpak apps, because those apps are sandboxed. They're separated from the OS so that if one app crashes, it can't bring down other apps and it can't bring down your operating system. Unfortunately, Filebot and media info need to talk to each other. So on Linux, you'd have to install these a more traditional way and not in a sandbox way, just in case someone watching this is running Linux. So let's get out of here and let's go to this one, which is just renamed as the episode names. So if I back out and open that in Filebot, I'll use the default binding. And because the folder name was named Westworld and the episodes were named as their actual episode names, this easily was matched up by Filebot. And if I again go down and click my custom expression, just as quickly, Filebot gives the same result as the other folder. Let's see if I can force something to go wrong here. So default bindings, let me use episode mode from the movie database instead. Well, that comes up the same way. Sometimes when I do this, it will come up with the 1x01, and I don't know why it does that. But most often, the listing at the ordered episode listing at both TMDB and TVDB match perfectly, and usually the only exceptions are with specials. Sometimes the specials are in different orders at each database. Sometimes one database will have more specials than the other. Most often it would be TMDB having more specials than TVDB. So I do everything based on TVDB because that's where Filebot's pulling everything from, and I just need to make one quick adjustment in Plex server in my TV show library to make sure that the ordering is pulled from TVDB and not the movie database. Plex is very, very flexible. Let me see if I can pull up an example, a recent example that I discovered. Let's see, TV shows. Opened off screen. So here's the naming guide. And I noticed they made a change to this recently with their examples. You'll see Doctor Who here. They've added in TVDB the show number. Normally with all their examples, however this show folder would be, they'd use that as an example in the episode name. But they've kind of switched things up. They're not putting the episode name in as the episode file name example. They're just having SO1 EO1 space dash space the episode name. So it's kind of interesting that they always used to use perfect examples and now they're mixing it up a little bit. And I think that's just to show how flexible Plex is. So you probably could use a custom expression to get this exact result. But mine would have this, well, mine would have this before this part. And this is what's interesting too. Doctor Who is simply listed as Doctor Who at TVDB. At TMDB, Doctor Who is listed as Doctor Who 1963 because the year is always included in any TV show listed at the movie database. It's not included at the TV database, so this is kind of a little interesting mix-up. And I'm not sure if it was intentional or not intentional. Maybe they did it this way just to show how flexible Plex is, or maybe somebody didn't realize they were adding the TVDB database number and they meant to add the movie database number. So this is optional. My movie expression adds the movie database number to the movie file name. And I do that because every once in a while you'll come across a movie that's released in one year that has another movie also released in that year with the same name. And you can identify those movies by their poster in Filebot, and then Filebot will add the right database number, and then it's a perfect match every time, and that same name movie from the same year doesn't get matched as the wrong movie when you add it to Plex. So I think that's about it. Let's actually go in and rename these. I forget which one's which, but we'll do this one with the default binding or expression. Rename. And we'll do this one with my custom expression. And in either case, Plex should find both sets of file perfectly fine. This is kind of very traditional, very similar to what you have, just with a proper season and episode coding. And this is how I like to have my files named, very descriptive, so I can just take a look and say, oh, I only have a 480p copy of that show or that season. Maybe there's a better release out on Blu-ray I can buy and rip. That's one way to acquire a file. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll bring this up one more time. And if you want a simpler movie expression, here's one, and here's a very simple one that just takes in subtitles. I didn't talk about subtitles in this video. I've got tons of Filebot videos that do talk about subtitles. I have a few subtitle only videos. But basically, Plex can rename a subtitle if you've prepped it correctly. Let me just keep talking and talk about that for a minute. So let's say you have a subtitle file. Let's just create a dummy file. And SRT is probably the best type of subtitle file you can get. So say this episode here had 3 subtitles available. One was the default one was the hearing impaired, which is also called the SDH one, and maybe it had a 4th subtitle for foreign language. Well, an actual subtitle file for the default would be renamed .eng or just .en. Either the 2-letter or the 3-letter code is fine. Filebot uses the 3-letter code for languages, and Filebot can auto-discover the language of the subtitle and give it this name if you've got an SRT file alongside Filebot. Sometimes Filebot doesn't like how a subtitle is named. If you simply rename it to match however the media is named before you use Filebot, it'll be fine. But if you prep your files, if you have all 3, and you add SDH to one or forced to the other, and you happen to have all 3, Plex will give it the proper language code automatically, and it does that through media info as well, while carrying these extra extension flags through. It works about 90% of the time. Sometimes it just messes up and you still have to rename this extra part of the extension yourself. But that's why you'll see that subtitle extension. Oh, I closed the window, wrong window. That's why you'll see the subtitle part added to my expressions. You can just delete that if you don't want to do anything with Filebots, but it's safe to leave in there because if you don't have a subtitle in the folder you're renaming, Filebot just ignores that because there's no subtitle. So I just wanted to explain that. I hope this has been informative. I don't know why you're seeing the 1x01 in Filebot, but try my custom expressions and see if that helps. And also make sure you're running the latest version of Filebot, and now we know at least you can follow what I've done to get the basic expression to see if it then works for you. Thanks for watching.